So coming in on the top today on the show, we have David Heatley. He's a cartoonist, illustrator, and musician. His artworks appeared on the cover of The New Yorker, New York Times, Nickelodeon magazine. He is an author of 2 books, My Brain is Hanging Upside Down and Qualification, both graphic novels, both like comic-based, which is perfect for this show because you guys know, if you're reoccurring listeners, that we're comic nerds on this podcast. And I say we as in me and my friend Cody. We've interviewed Kevin Eastman and Daniel Warren Johnson, 2 comic artists, and interviewed by musicians. So there's this juxtaposition of like different mediums, but same philosophical approaches. So this is the first time to really talk with someone who is both a musician and a comic artist. So this was a really cool conversation to kind of cross the mediums and see where in which the overlap is. And we get into that. David has a new album out called Life Our Own Way. It's a really cool record because it hits all these different mediums. There's like these weird genre flows within this record. There's this kind of indie hip hop, and then it goes to like Beatles-esque, and then it goes to punk. What we're going to listen to is a song called "You Only Get So Much Time," which is more of the Beatles-esque influenced song, and it gets stuck in my head a lot. So dig it, friends. You only get so much time. Life Our Own Way. David Heatley, You Only Get So Much Time, off the album Life Our Own Way, available on all streaming platforms soon. Yeah, guys, before we jump into it, if you can like, rate, subscribe, review the podcast and all the podcasts or some of the podcast platforms, it helps me keep talking to cool artists and sharing their insights with you. And yeah, cool stuff's happening, friends. All right, here's my conversation with David Heatley. Awesome. So I thought to start off, are you still breakdancing?
I wouldn't say it's a regular thing. Maybe at a wedding or something as a joke. I don't know. Yeah, not really.
That's awesome. Was it way better than I can ever do?
I mean, I revere breakdancing still. I just have no illusions about what an amateur I am. I'll just put it that way.
But just taking those like first few steps, you know, I mean, it's not just even dancing. You're like, I can't, like, I think about rhythm all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I'm dissecting rhythms. I'm listening to like records and being, why does that work? I think about rhythm all the time, but I personally, I just can't move to it like that. I have to think about it. Do you find like kind of being thinking in multiple mediums about how to express yourself, do you find it harder just to express yourself, or does the brain kick in and make it more difficult for you, or is it easier?
I mean, I think I'm a pretty intuitive musician, actually, because I don't really read music, and I'm very late to even learning remotely complex chords. So it kind of is all down to the feeling in the body and the rhythms I feel naturally and the grooves that come to me as a song idea. So yeah, and I'm a pretty good dancer. I'm just not a great break dancer, but I'm pretty good. I really do feel the music like in my body. I'd say it's pretty elemental to what I do.
You have a good flow when you go into like your rap parts of your songs. It's unique. Like I don't know. It's just uniquely you. And like, cause the first record I listened to of yours, like when Howard sent me everything, I'm like, I'm gonna listen to the previous albums.
Okay.
First, before I listen to the new one, just like I'll make myself a playlist of who I'm about to talk to, and I'll listen to the catalog up until. Partially because like the new record, like when you get the advances, you have to switch each song. You can't just play all of them, so it's a little more tedious. But
right.
Just to get a sense of the person, and like the first one I listened to was the Dooda.
Nice.
I was
the
like,
kids record.
Yeah, the kids record, and I was like, what? Like at first, it didn't bother. Like not that it bothered me. I didn't pick up on it until Potted Plant Guy. I'm like, what the fuck is this? Do I have the right guy? Like,
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've definitely been a fan of hip hop since I was in second grade, and these like little rap songs do come to me. And I honestly, I didn't know what to do with it until recently, where I had that song on the new album, "I Love You, Duh," and I was like, I'm gonna get some girls to rap this, and then I don't have to be the voice of this song, and it works so much better. So I could like Yeah, I don't know. I do think I get like rhymes and raps in my head all the time. I just feel sheepish about like standing behind them. So like for the kids record, it was kind of easy to have a little persona to like rap from that point of view. But just to stand behind and be like, yeah, I'm David Heatley, the cartoonist, and I rap, it just seems like really hard to pull off. I don't know what to do with it.
It's a what one on the note on the record. I love you, duh. That it's even though it was a female rapping, it felt like it felt like your flow.
Oh,
Go
that's cool. Yeah.
like yeah, like listen because I listened to the kids record first, and I was like, you have I don't know what it is. Like I didn't map it out or anything, but like it's just like it's kind of like the narrative flow and like the certain words you use to describe the situations, and it just if it draws you in. And it's really like I don't know how to describe it, but it you do a really good job at describing what you're talking about, and like within like it's almost got a narrative to it. It's not just kind of like a flow. I don't know.
Mm.
That's kind of a loose sentence, but like I feel like
No, I
it.
appreciate that. I think all my favorite rappers are like storytellers first, and so like even like hearing Slick Rick back in the day, or I don't know, even something like Jam on It. It's like you'd think that's just a party song, but they're like telling a whole story, like an intergalactic rap battle between Superman and an alien. It's just like it's super vivid and yeah, narrative based. I've always loved that. Like Nas too. I just love his storytelling.
Well, you do a good job at convey it in uniquely your own way. Um, but like, so is that kind of like as far as like lyric writing? Do you like when you take like the kids record? And I think that like as far as like a songwriting exercise, what a great because like there's so many specific things in that record, like the about from the book. And now you
hmm
you animated the book or you wrote the book? That I was
I I illustrated the book. Yeah, a woman named Ellen Potter was the author.
okay.
Yeah, that was a funny thing because the publisher just called me up and was like, "Yeah, we have this book. We're looking for an illustrator. We think you'd be a good fit." And I read it and I just like really fell in love with the whole story to the point where I was like, I want to really go to town on this and treat it like it's my own thing that I wrote. And so like Ellen and I became friends. And as I was drawing these characters and situations and like working through the whole story, just these little songs would pop into my head. Like even his name, Dooda, I was like, doot, 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 Dooda. Like
Yeah.
that would just be in my head. And so I just told her, I was like, I just have all these songs coming to me. Like, I'm just going to write these songs. Is that cool with you? And she's like, please, go ahead. So, yeah, it just was like, oh, we'll have like a record kind of accompanying the book when it comes out. And I got to say, like, I don't know that I've ever had a music project come to me that quickly. It was like I would go to my studio, a song idea would come like within a few minutes. I'd written it within an hour. I had demoed it. Like, it just, I don't know. I just was in the zone. Like, I just was channeling those songs from somewhere. It was really crazy.
That's really interesting. I wonder if it has to be with like the kind of fully encompassing yourself within like drawing and bringing this world to life visually and off
Yeah.
like these notes and like kind of the
Yeah.
audio like the follow.
I
Um,
think that did. Yeah, I was so immersed in it. Right. It was like it felt effortless because I was doing so much work during the day on just steeping myself in the narrative and these characters, so it like would come to me really, really easily. Like, oh, if this guy was going to sing, what would he sing about? And I just like knew it right away.
and like
Yeah.
and far as like it's songwriting, you don't have to worry like songs that are specific to a thing like resonate more and like that's like a cliche like tidbit of songwriting, write what you know, and like
Uh-huh.
in that world like everything is so specific like Gunther and like this rat that died, you know what I mean, like that like you get drawn into it because what this is so specific, and like listening through for a minute I was like this is really cool. Like I don't like this guy's going out there with like I can't even remember anything that detail about my childhood. Um,
Yeah, I mean, she's a truly great writer. She's to me, what I love about the book is, and my kids were the right age when I was working on this, so it was really a joyful project to be able to share it with them and like play the songs for them and draw with them. And but she's like it's a kind of like one of those gross out books, but it's written kind of on the level of like Roald Dahl or something. It's very literary too. Like she's very good at structuring a narrative. So yeah, I mean, there's just so much richness to draw from. I could just like open up a chapter and be like, oh yeah, this is a song right here. Here's another one. It just was. It really came out of her storytelling, I think.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Like like another one I was thinking of the cat's room because like there's like that thing as a kid you don't want to go back home, you're like, oh,
Mm,
your friend's place is so cool, or
yes.
the apartment in this case is so cool, and like that
Yeah.
musically you really captured it, and that that got stuck in my head for a minute.
Oh,
Um,
that's cool. That's one of my favorites from there too. Just that longing, especially when you're young and you're hanging out with a girl for the first time and she's like a really cool girl and she like
right.
knows all this cool stuff. You're like, I don't ever want to leave here.
Like
Yeah.
the bands on the wall, what I mean? Like the whole idea of showing someone how not showing telling someone how they feel, but kind of showing it. And like that took me back. That was so like that's I mean I think it speaks highly on your ability to like dive in emotionally to what you're working on and express it in different ways.
Oh,
So
dude,
like
thanks for saying that. That means a lot. Yeah.
well, it clearly was there. Like I was like, I'm listening to this kid's record, not knowing at first. Cause I'll listen to it driving around. So I just put it on play and like, because I got like a 45-minute drive to work every day. So I'm like, what is going? But
Cool. You got to spend some time in that world. That's
yeah,
good.
but musically, what I found interesting is like it was much more layered than the EPs that came before it, like the 111 and the 2 like
Hmm.
those records seem to be a little more bare bones and like this
Hmm.
I don't know if the order is correct because I know there was a band in between, but like was it kind of like a as far as like doing this for this kids record because like the new record is super layered and there's like in a good way like there's like a lot of like time and attention put into it.
Hmm.
um was that kind of a learning process or was that a style choice to kind of like move on from like a more bare bones like because even some of your art can be very like here it is, it's not too detailed, it
Hmm.
tells what it needs to tell, and like
Hmm.
those first few EPs I kind of feel represent that. um
Yeah.
was that more of like a choice to like more expand this world of this character for a this kid's record, and
Hmm.
was that kind of like a learning process that grew into the next record, or was this just like each project? Oh, I want more of this and more of that.
Yeah. So I think the order was actually there was the Bischoff's record, which was like a band, and we
Right.
worked with a producer named Jeff Lipstein, and I just learned a lot being around him and all the choices he made, and that was the first time I really had a producer working with me, like kind of taking my songs to this other place that I couldn't take them, and so I kind of like absorbed all the things Jeff was doing, and then I did that kids record right after, and I was kind of like I played almost everything on that record except for like a couple guitar solos my friend Pete would play or like the violin. But I layered all that stuff myself, almost like I used to do like 4-track demos when I was in high school or something. It was just like, do it intuitively, first take, just pile it on. So yeah, I think that came out of working with Jeff, and then actually the Angel Numbers EPs were after that. So maybe that was just a reaction to like like strip it way down again. And also those EPs were produced by my guitar player in that band named Pete Gallup. So some of those choices were just his. I think he has a sensibility that is a little more bare bones and bold and direct and so yeah, but I think my natural tendency is to want to go for that like wall of sound thing, and so I think that's why the new record is a return to that, and working with Mark Bingham, who's just, I mean, I can't even say enough good things about this guy. I really think he's a genius. Just he kind of preserved some of the qualities of my demo, but just knew how to like dial it all up and make it so big and so rich. So, but yeah, I think that's my natural sensibility is to want to make things pretty layered and intense and complex.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I feel like that's the the art of the record, the art of the recording is, you know, you don't want, like, of course, when you play it live, it's going to be like you and a guitar, or you and a guitar and a drummer, or, you know what I mean? It's going to be, it's not going to
Yeah.
be what you can come back and visit. So I agree with the sentiment that the record should be more of a, like a polished, like layered, like finite thing. Um,
Hmm.
so that's okay. Okay, I got that backwards then. But I found it interesting with the angel numbers. The one, that's a cool concept, and like, um, it got kind of like a white stripy vibe, like with some of the
Mm.
tunes.
Hmm.
And
I can see that.
if it's coming from a guitar guy that was producing, that makes sense.
Oh yeah, I mean, he's one of my favorite guitar players ever because he's just, I don't know how to describe it. Like, it's like every note he plays has like some pain and emotion and edge in it. I just love the way he plays. But yeah, it's a very guitar heavy record, I think, for that reason, because you know, he layered all those guitars on there, and yeah, I love what he does, and I trust him, and so that's kind of where he took some of the songs.
What one of the tunes, I don't remember the exact title, but it was about looking at the eclipse. Um,
Oh yeah, yeah, the Eclipse, right?
and like that was kind of reminiscent of the kids record in a way of describing the situation, and like you do a really like good job at like describing a very unique situation in like, oh, it sounds dumb to say you wrote that good. You know what I mean? Like, you wrote that situation. I knew what was going on, but sonically, like when you're writing a song, you're limited to what you can talk about just because of the pace of the music, or just the lack. It's like quick poetry in a way. Like, you can't really say like exactly what you're seeing. But
Yeah.
with a lot of your songs, you do a really good job of like describing the situation, the kind of immerse in that world. Is that kind of like a takeaway from that kids record?
Um, that's a good question too. I mean, so that song I wrote when I was like 18, and I was at Oberlin College for the first time, and there was an eclipse, and it was like this whole scene. It was like in the middle of the day, everyone was outside trying to, wear sunglasses, or I think you could look through like a CD. If you look through a CD, you could look at the sun, or I don't know. There was all these people just doing this, and it was just a scene, and it was like so I guess I took that literal thing and just made it absurd, and like going, what if this became like an over the top kind of carnival atmosphere? um but yeah, and then I don't know, but I guess at its base, like what you're picking up on, I mean, story is just really important to me. I mean, I call, when I talk about this record, I talk about like, I think I write retro pop story songs. That's how I think of them. They're just like, they're all little encapsulated short stories, and I've always been a fan of story songs. So I guess that's just what I'm drawn to writing too.
Who are some of the songwriters that have inspired that type of approach?
Well, I mean, I would say like the earliest American music is all story songs, especially if you listen to like cowboy music, you know, going back to like the turn of the century, even, they're just these stories. They're like about, this cowherd guy rode into town and he was the baddest and he could ride a horse the best, and then he
Yeah.
left and we miss him, or here's the exploits of this criminal, or here's that girl that got away. They are all these beautiful, and a lot of folk songs are too. They're just trying to capture a little narrative. But yeah, I'm trying to think of like, I mean, obviously Bob Dylan writes some great story songs. Uh, I mean, David Byrne with Talking Heads, there definitely were some songs that were just like, perfectly constructed little stories that began and ended. Even something like, Once in a Lifetime, like, this guy finding himself in a beautiful house with a beautiful wife. Like, how did I get here? There's a sense of space and time, and yeah, specific character in that case. Um, They Might Be Giants. I mean, a huge song for me was Anna Ang. That's just such a brilliant song, and I really get a sense of that relationship. And it's definitely, there's like some poetic, more abstract moments, but you really do get a sense of this, long distance relationship, like all the way across the world, being in love with this person. So yeah, those are just a few.
Yeah, I get, it is just this. It's a little story. It's kind of a dumb realization on my part. I was like, but yeah, but yeah, I don't know. That's cool. It's cool, and yeah. I guess like sometimes it takes like we get so caught up in the tree within the forest, you forget to see the forest. Because you're too busy trying to see the one thing. Um,
Mm.
is story writing something that well, I guess let's take a step kind of back. Was like art in like the medium of drawing more like your first expressive outlet, or was it music?
Well, I mean, if we take it all the way back to when I was like 2, there's like a there's a picture that my parents took of me sitting on a staircase where I'm holding a tennis racket, pretending to play guitar. So like that was really obvious. I loved hearing guitar and music, and mostly at church and stuff. But like, I definitely wanted to play guitar at a very young age, and at the same time, I was like always drawing. I would make like my own little picture books, and you know, newspaper comic strip type things. So yeah, I mean, but I would say like by high school, I was definitely identified as a musician, and I had a band, and like we were trying to make it, and get our record out, and we were playing around the East Village. But I was also drawing. So I was like drawing our flyers, or I was learning to paint in art class, and it wasn't until really I got to college at Oberlin that I like got really serious about comics and was like, oh, this is like could be just as powerful as painting in the right hands. And so I would say then the next like 20 years was really about learning how to be a cartoonist and tell stories in pictures. So I guess, in parallel to that, anytime I wrote music, I'm sure those two were talking back and forth to each other, like what I was learning in terms of drawing comics. And in comics it's about compressing everything down to just the simplest form, so like the simplest number of words that can fit into a word bubble or a caption, the simplest possible drawing, so that you just like read it immediately and you're not like caught up in all the details. That's something you can really apply to songwriting too. It really has to be very compressed and efficient, and usually you just have 2 verses, a chorus, and a bridge, and got to get the whole story in there, so every word counts.
Right. What was it? And what if like so I guess that's really interesting, like to kind of compare the two, in like because there's that lack of time and lack of space.
Mm.
With comics, there's the lack of space, right? You can only fit so much in a bubble. You can only fit so
Hmm.
much in a frame. Um,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
like at least so like when you started to like write, like it's kind of I don't know. Is it easier to stick to a form? Like I've talked to a couple comic artists, and they like sometimes there's the splash pages, right, where it's like it takes up a whole page, and like it just is one, it's one word, one note, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, is it easier to like stick it to a frame in a sense where like you have this size to tell this tale, in the
Mm.
sense of like a song, right? You only have so many verses before the chorus. So with you,
Hmm.
is framing as far as like approaching a song, or like because when I imagine it's a couple drafts to get like the story through, comic or song, right?
Hmm.
Like, so does the framing of that like kind of define, or does the framing of that confine?
Yeah, I would say I actually find the frame through whatever fragment first comes to me. So it's like in the case of a song, I'll often wake up from a dream where I've been dreaming some like crazy elaborate song, and it's like the most heavenly, rich thing you've ever heard. And then I woke up and I just have some little bit of a line and maybe the melody of like some bit of it. And I'm like, I gotta get this down. And
Yeah.
I'll just record that in my phone. But then like trying to then reconstruct it into its form. It's almost like, I think of it like doing a crossword puzzle where you've got like these missing spaces, and I have to just figure out, well, what is the frame of this one fragment? What would make sense to surround this one little piece of the song? And then it's like, it's satisfying once I realize what that frame is. And I guess with comics, it's kind of the same. I might have an idea for something, but I really won't know the page layout or even the panel layout until I'm starting to like feel my way into it. So, in comics, like an extra large panel or a full page moment is a huge moment, and it's all rhythmic in a way. So it's like you can think of that as like a whole note versus a 16th note or something. You really want to hold on that image. So, but yeah, I wouldn't just like, I wouldn't like think of the framing and then try and fill it, because it seems to like it needs to, the frame, it's kind of like doing a big painting. You wouldn't do a painting within the frame first. You would figure out what size the canvas needs to be, and then you'd put a frame around it.
Okay. It's interesting. It's that's because they're both like this mode of expression, and it's really interesting, the similarities. I've never talked to a cartoonist who's also like a musician. It's always been one way or the other. Like it seems like like it's hard to split like that amount of focus that like a drawing needs to convey itself and a song needs to convey itself.
Oh yeah. Yeah, they're both very demanding. I agree.
Right, like because the amount of detail to bring out what's happening in an image, and the amount of layers and like just writing that goes into capturing a song, like I need the mic up the snare drum, but now it's in, what I mean? Like there's all these little things that go into you don't think about. Same with a drawing.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
yeah, it's really fascinating to approach now, like the kind of like dwell in in the kids book universe where you're kind of like living in both. Was there like in it like it's interesting that you're dreaming about this. So like I'm guessing just with the amount of detail it takes to convey visually, like imagine the work hours that you put yourself through to get through it are like pretty ridiculous, and to be like dreaming of stuff later, you know what I mean? Like that has to, that's screaming workaholism in a good way.
Yeah. I mean, I'm lucky. Like my wife kind of insists on just having some downtime as a family, and I do try and keep pretty normal studio hours. So I'll get here at like 10 and probably leave at like 6 or 7, and rarely, once in a while I might just be like, I'm gonna just stay, honey, and I'll stay till like 1 a.m. or something. That's not that often though. But I will say, I mean, some people work a job so then they can have a life that they enjoy. But like my work is my life, and I really am always working on things. So like if I'm driving in the car, I'm just humming whatever little song I happen to be working on at the moment, and I'm kind of working out the melody, and I'm working out the words, and I'm just singing nonsense in place of the words until some words start to form there. I'm just always turning things around in my head. So, but it doesn't feel like work to me. It's kind of like it is my downtime. It is just play. And so if I go home after drawing all day, I might just want to, play my guitar for an hour and just like, figure out some chord changes and just for fun, you know what I mean? But then all that might get used later. So it's just, I don't know. I think it's just my approach. I try not to get super intense with any of it until it's time to like finish something. Then it might get more intense. But I'm trying to keep a playful attitude towards as much of it as I can.
That's a good, because if you think about it, there's not too many jobs that you play. Music,
Yeah.
you play music. If you're in theater, you play. You play drama. I don't know. Sports are a play, but like
Sure.
not too many. So okay, so like the music's kind of like the after, like that's the almost, I don't want to say hobby in a way, but that's the more relaxing mode of expression, or more fun version. And I think that's cool that you keep it more of a play approach, right? Because it's like so much of songwriting and like improv is this like mysterious like magic thing that happens. Like you catch that melody in your head and you're looking at the potted plant, so you think it's the guy, whatever. Like even though that's from the book, but like there's this magic that happens to it, and like but it's also like a practice too. It's like this weird like a dual like thing, like where you have to have a little bit of both. So I think that's a really cool approach to it, to keep it more light and just keep it kind of open, so when things do come, you can kind of focus on them. That's
Yeah.
cool. That's really cool. I don't know if that's
I think that's, yeah, I have a feeling that's like whenever I'm in a living room with people and we're just sort of playing with no mics and it's just acoustic and you just hear our voices like mix in the air in the room. I just kind of always feel like, well, that's how music first started. And in some ways is at its purest form. Like you're around the campfire playing some rocks and, some, some animal that you've stretched out into a string, or I don't even know what these early instruments were, but that really intimate, togetherness, playfulness, relaxing after a long day of hunting or whatever. I just feel like that's where music used to fit into people's lives, and I kind of feel like that is a way in which my music functions in my life. It is this, it's this playful thing. It's this downtime. It's and then, I mean, I get really serious when I'm then recording this. So I want it to be the best it can be in the studio. But just the making of it and the dreaming of it and the demoing it, I just try and keep it really kind of light and loose if I can.
Is there like do you have like as far as like is it all like, do you have a routine of like, so do you just record everything you kind of do and like refer back to it? Or is it kind of a mental recording, like, that chord progression kind of works with that line I mumbled the other day?
Yeah, I mean, so I've kind of hit upon a process over the years of just anytime I have a little snatch of melody or a lyric or just even a voice saying some dialogue or something, I'll just notice it and then I'll get out my phone and record it. And I probably have like several hundreds of these still sitting on my phone that I'm always sifting through. And I forget about them. Like years could go by, and then I'll try and go through the folders and organize them, and I'll listen through and be like, oh yeah, there's that idea. So I'll get out my guitar and try and like play some chords that might fit with the thing I'm hearing. And then if that really excites me, then it's like I'll kind of work with it, maybe unconsciously for the next week, and just kind of turn it around. And then when I'm ready to say, okay, I'm going to make this song now, I'll sit down with my notebook and my guitar, and I'll really just try and like write out the thing. Like, here's the lyrics. And usually by then the stuff kind of comes pretty quickly because I have been, turning it around in my head and probably even dreaming about it. And, just in the recesses of my unconscious, they're already working on it. So then when I'm ready to sit and write, like it does seem to come fairly quickly at that point.
It's cool. It's interesting. I wish like I can remember my dreams. Like I can think of 2 times I've dreamt of a melody and like kind of tried to figure it out later. But like there's something to that like unconscious, like I was talking with Bill Stevenson from The Descendants. He dreams shit all the time apparently. Like he keeps a recorder outside of his bed. And like,
oh, nice.
Yeah. And I'm just like, how do you fully hear the shit? Like, and like he's like that guy, where he hears the whole picture and like will chart it out and tell everyone what to do.
Wow.
Do you find
That's cool.
do you find that for yourself, or do you hear the whole thing and like you kind of guide the people you're working with, even though you record a lot of it? Or is it sorry.
No, it's fine. I mean, when I'm like writing the thing, it's usually like just guitar and whatever I can sing, and I'll like record that version into my phone. That's like the rawest demo. And then I usually do like a more elaborate demo. Again, it's still very rough and there's all kinds of mistakes, and sometimes I'm just making stuff as I go, but it's definitely more layered where I'm, this is when I might stay till 1 a.m. or something. I'll just take a song and try and do like 4 to 8 tracks on it and just, layer it up with some harmonies and melodies and maybe some keyboard pads or something and make it really sound like a recorded song. And then I think when I go into the studio, we'll at least have that to refer to. Now this working with Mark, like I kind of gave him carte blanche. I was just like, if any of that's interesting or worth keeping, fine, but I want to hear what you hear in this song. And then the people he got for this record are just so brilliant that any part they're going to play, like I'll absolutely prefer to whatever my little half-baked thing was. So, a lot of part of the fun right now is just like releasing some of that control and just trusting other people. Like, oh, you're hearing this in that song. I never would have even heard that. That's really cool. Like I have a song I just working on with Mark now that I never would have thought of it as like a piano ballad, but he got this like incredible piano player to play this part that I had played clumsily on the guitar, and suddenly like it's a whole different song, you know, and that's really cool.
Yeah, it's really hard to kind of like, in a way, it's really hard to ask for help musically or creatively, right? Like,
Yeah,
I don't know. That's a me statement. I find like I'll figure out how to play the banjo and I'll come record that bit. And like in my head, like, you know, two great banjo players. Ask them to record on your thing. Like,
I know. Yeah, it is hard to release control, but it is very freeing when you do. Yeah,
right. It's super cool because now it's not just your song, but it's also part of their song. And like,
yeah,
and
yeah.
they like how you said, it's always that thing that's way cooler than you could have imagined because you had the big thought of the start of it. Does that like
Right.
so the kind of reverse the approach to like kind of how you like will nurture a song or a lyric idea or a song seed into a song, does that with comics, does that kind of pay off the same way, or is that a completely different approach?
Yeah, it's pretty different. I mean, I think all the comics I've done, um, they've all been autobiographical, so they're all
Right.
based on my life, and I tend to just like write lots of notes about what I want to include, and then I do like thumbnail drawings of like really rough panel layouts, like how much of the story can I fit into this one page? How many panels would it take to tell that bit on that page? Yeah, there's all kinds of like, it's like almost it's mathematical. It's like you're just dividing and adding, and you know, there's a lot of planning and design work that goes into it. So in some ways, you know, the toughest part for me in comics is just the writing of it, like getting down to what actual words go into these panels. And then I tend to, you know, I gotta say, like the stereotype of the cartoonist, especially the male cartoonist, is just someone who like really fetishizes all the tools and wants every brushstroke to be perfect and really wants to show off like at how great they are at drawing. And I gotta say, I've like run to the opposite approach, which is like the drawing is almost the least important part to me. Like to me, the architecture of comics is the writing. And if the
Mm.
writing's no good, I don't really care how beautiful it is. Like I just don't want to read it. So I'm trying to get the story right, the emotion right, and the beats right. And then the drawings are usually kind of like pretty rough and quick and simple on my part. And you know, that's on purpose, but it's not to everyone's taste, but that's just my approach. So yeah, it's pretty different. I mean, you know, Art Spiegelman is someone I still revere, and he said in an interview, someone was like, "Was it really cathartic making your book Mouse?" And he's like, you know, it's about as cathartic as like making an inlaid wood table where you're like
Huh.
fitting these perfect, you know, slivers of wood together into the right pattern. It's kind of like that. It's not really cathartic. It's a lot of planning and you know, meticulous, you know, scratching and building and yeah,
Huh.
inking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a beautiful like thought of that. Because I found myself like talking randomly to a guy who makes like this is at a coffee shop the other day, who makes like wooded like carpet. He makes tables and cabinets and stuff.
Hmm.
And I was telling I have a friend who runs an art gallery who does wood burning. It's called
Mm.
Negative Space in Cleveland. And
Hmm.
I was like, oh yeah, that's super cool. And like I started telling him about him, and he's like, yeah, I can never do that. I can't be artsy. I'm like, what do you mean? You crafted that pile into this functional thing. Like that's
Yeah.
I feel
Yeah.
equally as expressive. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's super punk rock in a way. To kind of like it doesn't matter how these chords sound. Like it's saying the song. To go back to your approach, it's saying what it needs to convey.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think my drawing approach is kind of punk influence in that way. It's a little bit rude and a little bit in your face and like kind of, you know, thumbing my nose a little bit at the people who are too fussy with their I mean, you know, I love people who have like gorgeous, perfect art too. I just could never be one of those people. I'm just not I don't think I'm cut out for that, you know.
it's still expressing, it's doing the same thing, and like I think that's as Ian MacKaye as like as Picasso, what I mean? Like
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
saying like you can say what you need to say with the same things. It just doesn't have to be as like elegant, it can be
Hmm.
equally as impactful.
Yeah,
Um,
totally.
and with
Yeah.
My Brain Is Hanging Upside Down, just to kind of speak on the punk ethos, just the Ramones tune right there in the title, makes
Yeah.
so much sense why you see what you see and you read what you read when you get into it. That and
That's cool. Yeah.
they're like, and that song, for me, it's always been like this weirdly impactful Ramones song. Like I love the
Yeah.
Ramones, but that song in particular, that hits the feels in a different way. And
I totally agree. Yeah.
I was
It,
gonna,
it-
sorry,
yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna ask, what is that for you? Because you used it as a book title.
Yeah, it was this thing where I mean I was really into them in like, I don't know, eighth grade or something. And then when I was 30, I was just like re-listening to them and just being like, God, this is the greatest stuff in the world. I was like learning some of their songs on my guitar, and I was playing that one in particular, like over and over again, just like belting it out, just for fun. And this is as I was working on the book, and I didn't have a title, and then it just hit me. I was like, oh, I should just name the book that. And something about that song, like, it's a very specific. It's kind of a story song, actually. It's really specific about like Ronald Reagan going to fucking Germany and like,
Yeah.
cozying up to these people who are basically fascists and just really, trying to tear him a new one over that. But like, when I was listening, when I was playing that song and singing it, I could just personalize it though. It didn't have to be about like geopolitics. It felt just about as specific as, emotions that I could be feeling in the moment too. Like he was channeling something, this outrage and this sense of, you know, having, I don't know what it is, like feeling violated by somebody. That's kind
Yeah.
of what I hear in that song. And just the power of like yelling no back in that person's face. Like that's what a lot of, I think, punk rock means to me. And so, yeah, the book was that for me. It was kind of like one big screaming my truth back out to the world and being like, fuck you all. This is what happened to me. No one's going to gaslight me. No one's going to tell their version of my story. This is my story. I'm telling it myself. So yeah, it was like a pretty punk influence kind of book.
Because like that book goes pretty deep and like is very revealing in a lot of ways, and like just even the four big sections like mom, dad, sex, and race, like those are
Oh yeah.
heavy topic. So like
Yeah.
after a project like that, was it was it were you relieved in a lot of ways, or was this kind of like, because I'd imagine also it'd be a little like anxiety provoking, kind of burying yourself like that.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely felt like a changed person after finishing it. Um, that book's really complicated for me for a lot of reasons. Like I think the person who made that book was pretty crazy and was like kind of on a narcissistic bender. So, and also I just have always been kind of missing that part of my brain that would be afraid or ashamed to reveal something. People say, "Oh, you're so courageous or brave." I just am missing that thing that would hold anyone back. So I don't really think that's like a virtue always. So I don't know, and I could never get away with making that book now. I would just be absolutely pilloried because I'm just really trying to reveal like the most ugly sides of my racism and sexism, and that's just not an approach that I think is very welcome right now. It's like, oh, cool, a privileged white guy just talking about how racist and sexist he is. Yeah, I want to read that. And I think the
Yeah.
book is better than that, but I can just really see a take on it that's that. And I wouldn't blame whoever had that take, but yeah, I mean, it's definitely a book I had to do. I had to kind of vomit that all out, and I'm glad it's out there and it keeps finding people, but yeah, it does provoke a little bit of embarrassment for me. And I don't know. I like I said, I couldn't make that book now.
It's I don't know. I think like one, I agree. Like it sucks that you wouldn't be able to make that book now, because I think that's important to be like, hey, I made mistakes and I didn't understand things, and like to put it out there to kind of like talk through it. You know, a lot of times I feel like we don't get to like talk through things like because you just don't talk like not that
Yeah.
I'm saying let's go be racist and sexist. Not that I'm saying that.
No, no, I
Like
get it.
but I think it's important to be able to be wrong and be like not and self-reflect in the way and grow out of it. And like if you don't, it becomes like this shame that just bottles you down and like so
Yeah.
I'm glad the initial thing was a release and a changed person.
Yeah.
Because like that's like another kind of bounce to your other book that I found really interesting is you kind of took on all these other problems that you didn't have. Um,
Yeah.
you but you know they kind of speak on like growing from this like being able to be wrong. Also, that's that example. Like all these other people are going through these things, and you're kind of growing from that. What
Hmm.
was that experience like?
Yeah. So my second book, Qualification, you're talking about?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. No, sure. So that was, yeah, that came out a couple of years ago. I mean, that's a, that's a, that's a book I'm proud of. I feel similarly like I feel like a different person after having made it. It took me like 6 years to make it. It was a really long, arduous process. And it was me wrestling with, growing up in this 12-step family that was kind of culty, honestly. My parents treated it a bit like a cult, and I felt like it was pushed on me my whole life. And I finally like relented and started going to these programs when I was like 30, and I was feeling really vulnerable and had a kid and was like feeling really fucked up. Um, so the story is really about, how did I get into going to these programs? How did I get sucked in to the point where I really feel like I got addicted to going to addiction programs, which is really ironic. And I felt like not okay unless I was there, and I felt like I would lose my mind if I wasn't there. So it was driving a wedge in my marriage, and like really almost broke up my marriage. How sucked up I was by this whole world. So it's just about trying to like grapple with that and reflect what really goes on in these rooms, and try not to be judgmental too, because those rooms have saved some people's lives, and they're like
Yeah.
the perfect thing for some people. They were kind of the perfectly wrong thing for me. It just in some ways it kind of activated my narcissism in a different way. It kind of pulled me away from my wife. It kind of helped me to just pathologize like every human failing that I have, rather than just seeing it as something anyone can relate to. So yeah, I have so many mixed feelings about it, but it was important again to sort of get my truth down and yeah, just get that out and express it. And then, if people see how people feel about it, and some people can relate, and some people probably makes them angry. Probably every reaction in between those two.
It's a touchy subject because it works and doesn't work for so many people. 12-step programs. Um, one thing that it's interesting, like the kind of like, is it the comfort of the schedule? Is it the comfort of I can't get into any of these things I'm not trying to get into because I know I'm going to go to this, or was it kind of the comfort of the community that made you feel addicted to these programs?
Yeah, I think they work, you know, the opposite of addiction is really feeling a part of something. So the reason why they work for people who are addicts is that they're replacing that,
Yeah,
addiction with a community. And these people, you find people who love you and care for you, and you have a place to go and connect. So in my case, I mean, I was really hurting too. I mean, I didn't go to these rooms for fun. I was really in pain. But yeah, I think I felt, you feel blissed out in these rooms. You feel like
mm,
I'm one with everybody. And, there's all these boundaries. You can talk for your 3 minutes. No one interrupts you. You feel validated. Um, and there's kind of, again, to be a little critical, there's sort of a false sense of intimacy because these strangers are just bearing their souls after never having met each other sometimes. And you feel
right.
really close to people, but you don't actually know them. And so, and then someone can just like not come one week and never show up again. And so there's just, it's not the same as like really having friends or really seeing a therapist for 10 years
Right.
or being in a therapy group or like something where you're committed and you have like an ongoing relationship with that person, there's something else a little bit weirder going on there. And it is, for me, it was addictive because it was like I'd get high when I went to the meetings. I would feel kind of like blissed out and at one with the universe. And then when you go back home and your kid's screaming and your wife is criticizing you about something, I found myself like even more impatient and me even more irritable because I was so high from the meeting. So it just, yeah, I don't know. I don't want to be too critical. I'm just saying, like, for me, it just didn't work,
Yeah, no, it's because I had some friends that were in AA, and I found myself and my mother. So I found myself in meetings like more often than not, and like the I'm trying to remember what it was, the one where it's like the family based one.
Al-Anon?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And then I oddly got a gig running an open mic night at a bar, a sober bar called Not a Bar. It was like a bar, like the atmosphere of a bar, but you'd go up and you can get like a Diet Coke or a slushie.
Cool.
Yeah, it was cool. It took me back to like high school, and you would have like those, or middle school where you'd have the dances on the weekends or whatever, like at the social group where like they try to create that atmosphere, but it's just lighter and like. And it was cool. It was a really, really interesting environment to kind of run an open mic in, because more often than not, people were kind of more conveyed to themselves. They weren't as like open, like how you kind of, the reason I bring this up is because you bring that 3 minutes of being allowed to do a thing. Like it seems that there's just this way, and like, and I think it works for a lot of people. And one thing that's great is it's free. You just have to like find it. But also like, I think that it's just like with like a schedule of like a creative schedule or a work schedule, like, or a work community or a band or something, like you get to immerse yourself in that, and it should be okay to be taken away from it. You should be fine if you don't rehearse for a week, but when you're not, that's when maybe it's not working.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say a couple of nice things. I'll say, I would say the programs were like the most democratic system I've ever experienced, where every week was a new speaker. Every few months there was a new leader of the group. A treasurer would rotate. They'd collect money and pay for their rent themselves. Like, it was a really highly functioning kind of democratic vibe, and I really appreciated that. It was kind of miraculous, and it was people who you would never necessarily meet otherwise. I'm sure there's tons of Republicans and Democrats all just sitting in that room, and they have a different purpose together. And so there's something really beautiful about that. And there were really good tools I learned, especially like in the money program that I did, just about being more aware of your finances. And, it's kind of like a boot camp for growing up in a few certain ways. And there are definitely like principles in Al-Anon that I still reflect on all the time, really, about like having good boundaries and detaching from insane people in your life, and all that stuff is really good. I guess I would say, like, at its base, what I couldn't get down with ultimately was that it's still kind of a sin-based ideology, which is that, they really believe like you were born with this disease and it's going to be with you for life, and without the program you're fucked, and you only have a day at a time of not being fucked. So it's just like, I believe in growth. I believe that people can get better and stay better. It's not that, even people who are addicted to things, I think therapy works, and, harm reduction approach to substance abuse works. Like, there's other ways that are not God and sin based that actually work for people. So that's where I kind of part ways.
I agree with that. Now I didn't spend as much time as you did. But just kind of being able to observe the culture from kind of afar, and in the certain circumstances, it's definitely how you said, like, it's definitely the big book thing, the kind of completely 180.
Sure.
Going back to this new record, one thing I found really interesting is like the first two tunes on the record kind of quarantine, like current event like tunes, like have like this approach where they like build in with like they start the structure in a different way, and then like the middle half the album up until like I Love You Duh, which I
Hmm.
got like some cool Kraftwerk and Talking Heads vibes. Um,
Yeah.
was like very kind of like Beatles like harmony, lush, built up like was that kind of like in writing those songs like because most of those were accompanied with the female backup
Hmm.
singer and they have this like really like Beatles-esque vibe. Is that kind of
Yeah.
where you heard that going, or was that kind of the producer, or was like that when she added?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, definitely Mark had a vision for these songs. We were pretty in sync though, and we did kind of, yeah, we traded notes back and forth a lot, while doing takes and then in the editing process too and mixing. Um, but I would say like each song was its own little microverse, microcosm.
Yeah,
Like it was just sort of like whatever the song needed to kind of be its fullest self. I mean, I certainly am very steeped in the Beatles, and like, yeah, I'm sure the influence is all over the whole album. And I think, part of their genius was just like how incredibly eclectic their material was, especially when they were just learning to play and you know, gigging in Germany and stuff and just grinding it out. Like the different styles and the different genres that they would play, like no other band was being that adventurous with their set lists. And I think that shows in all their writing and then in all their producing too. It's just like the ideas colliding with each other. This one's got like a reggae lick in it, and then also some crazy guitar line, and it's just so that's definitely an influence in terms of being super eclectic and uh, you know going where the song needs to go and trying to. I guess I'm always interested in like kind of complicating and subverting an expectation for a song. So you think it's going to be one thing, but then it's sort of a head fake and it's got a whole different thing going on. So I try to do that a bit too. Something like, if we became lovers, it just sounds like this groovy 70s, yacht
yeah,
rocky
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of love song, but then the lyrics are just like completely bleak and bitter and, so I don't know, that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's in that juxtaposition of like of lush and beautiful music and like a beautiful melody and like terribly sad lyrics on top of it
Yeah.
seems to be that works.
Cool.
um when it what but so after like when it gets to meme like after I Love You Duh, then it kind of the rest of the tunes get this kind of like punk vibe in a way,
Mm.
especially with
Hmm.
meme too, like like tearing apart internet culture in a way, or like not tearing apart, but noting on
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
were these songs like kind of written at a different time? Like the end, like I think the album is very put together in a cool flow of a way. Like it starts off on a like it draws you in. It gets much like it gets super super lush and harmonic, and then it kind of like tapers out on like these like punk tunes, and
Hmm.
or more like more energized. Like were those tunes written like with an idea to be their own thing, or like because what's cool about the album is it's like if I had to define like, oh, David's music sounds like this, I wouldn't be able to because it's everything. Which I personally love that idea. That like, you have to listen to the whole thing. Sorry, like, tell me what you like. But
Yeah, that's cool. I like that you like that about it. And I do think of it as, I mean, I would hope that just about every listener could at least have one song on there that they dig, because they are so different. I like what you said too. I do think I was kind of thinking of it in groups of like 5 songs. So I feel like there's a flow between the
okay,
first 5 and then the next 5, and then those last 5 they almost tell different stories, or there's like just a different flow with those together. But I also think the record's kind of like a circle, like it kind of goes, by the time it gets to Rock My Mind, that's sort of almost all the way back to the beginning in terms of the feel and the flow, like just more of a heavy rock thing. Um, I don't know that I didn't like write the songs in any particular order. Like some of them, I don't know, like Life Our Own Way, the title track. I think I wrote that like 5 years ago or something. I had never recorded it. Meme, I definitely wrote very recently. Um, I'd say the bulk of the tracks I wrote in 2020, 2021. So they are all pretty recent. And at least 4 or 5 of them I wrote after going down to Louisiana and doing the first session. So some of them came out of like the inspiration of being down there for the first time and meeting these musicians. And in a way, I think I was kind of writing those 4 or 5 new ones, like with these musicians in mind to play them even. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely becomes more clear what you can do when you know who you're working with and their skill sets and what they thrive in.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah.
It's a life.
Like with the like the duet with Tiff, Life Our Own Way. Once I had written that, I was like, oh my God, okay, we got to do another duet. I have this idea for this like kind of sweeter love song about someone who's just like really resistant to love and is maybe really traumatized and like trying to trust again. And I was like, okay, I want to sing that one with her too. So that was definitely written with her in mind as like a co-singer. That's just one example of the kind of ways in which you think of people's, people like the musicians are almost like colors on your painting palette, and you kind of know how to compose something with them in mind. Yeah.
What was that? Be on your side or on your side?
On your side.
Yeah, because once you know the tools, and like one thing, if her and your voice really worked well together, and like with On Your Side really does like it kind of reminds me of some of the stuff you touched upon in some of your books, like this like kind of like willingness to like accept one person, and that's kind of goes to like I guess a brain is hanging upside down. Some of the kind of narratives in the relationship part of that book. But even just the idea of life your own way or life our own way, like with the work that you do, like I feel like that's kind of like that's a title or a song seed that comes out of like a conversation with a friend or someone else who's living like a completely different, like they kind of touch upon what we said earlier in the conversation. Do you want to like work to live or live to work? And you're living your work. Like, is that kind of a reflection on that? Is that come out of like even like a family conversation of like, even like, well, they do this thing every day and it kind of sucks. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I do think it's maybe like a kind of a personal anthem that I do think of the world as like, it can be pretty cruel. It can really try and grind you down. There's not, people don't really get encouraged to make art and to express themselves. And, the message is always just like, yeah, you can do that, but you're going to fail at it. So there's anytime you do, commit to yourself and just keep making work in the face of that, I just think it's really heroic. And I think we all need to kind of fan those flames in each other. So I'm inspired by young people who just, know what they want to do and do it. And the more I look back on my young self, the more impressed I am that I was so clear at what I wanted to do, and I didn't let things stop me. And I'm just like grateful to that young person for getting me here. And so in some ways it's like, yeah, it's sort of like hoping other young people would hear that and be encouraged, but then also just even people my age, like thinking back to their younger selves and trying to take some of that courage and heroism into the current state of your life too, living life on your own terms at your own time and not letting it grind you down.
It's weird. It's strange that that's the thing that no one believes in, like, it's going to work out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do the thing you like. Have fun with that. Like, what?
I mean, for me, like, art is what makes life worth living at all. So, I just want people to keep making art. Absolutely. It's like the most important thing to me,
It's beautiful. Well, David, thank you so much for chatting with me today. I really appreciate this. Before we go, do you have any other projects other than the album in the works?
Yeah, I mean, what's crazy is like while we were mixing this, I wrote another album's worth of songs. So I was just down in Louisiana again a couple weeks ago with Mark, and we recorded all the basic tracks for this next record. So it'll probably be at least 6 months or more before we have a finished record, but that's in process, which I'm really happy about. And it just means I'm just kind of like planting a flag. Like it means that music's gonna stay at the forefront of my life for a little while, and I'm just going to keep doing this, you know?
Nice. A quick random question before we go. How much harder is it to put out a book than it is a record? Or is it putting out a book easier than it is to put out a record?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm putting this record out myself. So that's different from having a publisher. I mean, I will say it's nice. It's kind of freeing to put something out yourself. And I've done this with books too, because it's your own timetable. And with a publisher, it's like you finish a book and then like a year later it comes out. So there's a lot of waiting around, and things can take a long time, like for editing and, you know, stuff like that. So yeah, there's an immediacy to like doing things on your own terms, which I really like.
Okay, cool. I just had a friend who did a film, and like they were just going on about how much hard. Like, I just want to make records. Like from what you described, yeah. All right, man. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Dave. This was great. I really appreciate it.